Hey everybody, I know it's been a long day full of great activity. Thanks for making it all the way through with us, and welcome to Carlsbad, welcome to Startup Week. We're so thrilled to have you all up here. We did this earlier today, but just curious at this point in the day where we're at, how many people are from Carlsbad? All right, glad you didn't have to make too much of a commute. How many people are from North County? All right, love to see that. Again, if you heard me at lunch, I'm sorry, but this is why it's important for us to do programming up here. We know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of founders that start companies here in North County, and we hear how sick of driving down south they are. So we're so glad to have them up here in Carlsbad, in this lovely venue here at New Village Arts. They've been a fantastic partner of ours for so long. We are going to have a great reception as well just after this out in the lobby area, so stick around for that. But it's my pleasure to introduce Maisha Cobb, who's a fellow board member of mine, and who's going to introduce our speaker and kick off this fireside chat. Dr. Bronner's is a great institution here in North County, so we're all very excited to hear the story.
Thank you, Matt. All right, thank you, Warriors, for sticking out throughout the whole day. I am pleased to introduce Michael Milam, who is the COO of Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps, the premier natural soap line in the U.S. Yes, we have a contingency here, right? Thank you for the Dr. Bronner's crew. Can you all give us a big wave here? Welcome, thank you. I think Michael Bronner is here. Yeah, thank you for joining us as well. So since joining the company in 2005, Michael has helped enable the company's 14x growth. While Michael's job description changes over time to meet the company's current and future scale, his mandate remains constant. Protect the revenue, protect the cash, protect the margins. That's actually a good mandate. His daily activities include oversight of forecasting, facilities planning, production capacity planning, 360 inventory management, fulfillment, ERP, BI, business intelligence, and IT. Michael was born in Raleigh, North Carolina. He holds an MBA and a master's in divinity. Wow, that's awesome. A master's in divinity and is currently pursuing his doctorate in business administration. What school?
Columbia International University in South Carolina.
That's awesome. He is, when asked about being a COO, his short answer is always, a good COO is 50% mathematician, 50% politician, and 20% magician. We won't question you on that now. All right, so one of the reasons why we are so pleased to have Dr. Bronner's, did all of you get some samples, by the way?
Yes.
Yay! Kathy, our board president, is showing us her sample. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the samples and the commentary about not knowing about almond. So one of the reasons why we wanted Dr. Bronner's to be here is the theme of today is how do we grow in our own backyard? So for many founders, it is becoming a really tight environment with how we grow, and money is not a given anymore. And so as you'll hear in the story as we talk to Michael, money isn't always the way that you have to go. Outside money isn't always the way that you have to go. And we found it quite inspiring that the company has grown without necessarily having to get outside investment. Outside equity, sorry. Debt is money too, but outside equity they have not had to get. So Michael, welcome. And the first question, so what I'll do is I'll have a couple of questions for Michael, and then maybe about midway through I'll open it up and see if there's any questions. And then we will go back to our final kind of questions. What does it mean to be a nearly 70-year-old startup? That's how I like to think about Dr. Bronner's.
Okay. Yeah. What does that mean? When we first started talking about ourselves in that terminology, it was a little more true than it is now. It was a few years old. But what I think is that for a long time, Dr. Bronner's was at the periphery. It was basically sort of it made enough money to keep itself going, but green wasn't sexy yet. it was just, we were in every yurt, every little mom and pop health food store, but around the late 90s, it started, America started to come back and to these sorts of sensibilities. Dr. Bronner was always there. And so there's kind of a renaissance of people's exploring healthy options, and Dr. Bronner was right there to greet America as a general when it was starting to come, in general when it was coming back. And so we didn't grow that much for 50 years almost. And so around the turn of this century, from 2000 to 2005, it started to pick up, and that's when the leadership passed from Dr. Bronner's shortly through the next generation, and then very shortly after to the current generation, where Mike and David are the president and CEO. And so that there's a re-envisioning of what giving traction to what the label says. There's a re-envisioning of that, and then it was basically like a new base, and that's when we really started to see very healthy, sometimes almost dangerous growth for the company. So it was old, but it never really took off until the company was 45 or 50 years old.
We, throughout the day, we've talked about startups. And how many of you are founders in the audience, by the way? Good, a nice size and a nice amount of you. We talked about companies being successful by solving problems. And I'm wondering what the problem is that Dr. Bronner initially set out to solve, and how you stayed true to that problem solving.
Dr. Bronner is solving for the fact of World War II and nuclear bombs. And he both on the very, very close level lost relatives in concentration camps, and at the very collective level, I would say, just saw what was going on with the bomb and everything. And he was a soap maker, master chemist in his own right in the States in the 30s. And so two things: he knew how to make soap, and he needed a job. And so he knew how to make soap, and he put his moral ABC on the bottle in order to get that out. So he was solving for a way to deliver his moral ABC to as many people as who would listen. It wasn't a business problem he was trying to solve originally, but the company was sort of founded to fill in the need for a supply chain to get his moral ABC out.
Interesting. Never knew that story. And how does that, this isn't one of the questions that I had planned to ask, but how does that story, I mean, it's a very profound story. How does that storytelling carry forward through your company today? Because it feels like it's a really important part of your brand.
It is. What I would say is that Dr. Bronner very much lived high on the mountaintop and would speak a lot of platitudes about things, but in actuality, there's that iconic picture of Dr. Bronner from 1973 where he's holding the soap. You see it on the literature. But in actuality, if you were to examine everything about that picture, Dr. Bronner was not in an ecosystem where he could make much of a difference other than a soap formula. The plastic, that was dubious, we don't know whence that came. The paper labels, no SFL, no sustainable forestry on there. There's complete opacity in the supply chain, so you didn't know what was in the ingredients, essentially. And so what the current generation of ownership and leadership has done is to give traction to some of the more esoteric ideas that Dr. Bronner had. And most of that has shown up not just in what we do, but it has shown up in the actual physical, the physical reality of the soap with organic, then fair trade, and now regenerative organic certified supply chains. We know where things come, recycled bottles. Basically, we both helped push sort of the adjacent possible, but we also benefit from a more enlightened business ecosystem. And we're kind of vanguards in that way, but we're also beneficiaries of where we are in history. And so we're trying to live that double existence there.
Yeah, because you were kind of in the green movement before green was a thing, like you said.
Right.
Green wasn't a thing. So how did you sustain yourself? Because I'm for a lot of founders looking to find a market, right? It isn't always clear where that market is, and you kind of have to sometimes chart a path yourself. So you were kind of hippie before hippie was like the cool thing.
Yeah.
How did you figure out what your market was and how you were going to sustain yourself in those days?
There's really no growth plan back in those days. Those days are pre. Let me give some generation numbers. First generation was Dr. Bronner's grandfather back in Laupheim, Germany in the 1850s. Then his dad was a soap maker. Then Dr. Bronner was a soap maker, and so this fifth generation that the brothers run and own now. Before the fifth generation, it wasn't driven as a company in order to grow. It grew some, it grew by word of mouth, but there wasn't the marketing drive, there wasn't the sales force. The sales force was one of Dr. Bronner's sons driving around with soap in a minivan, and he would find health food stores and go and play guitar and sing with people and give them some soap, and then they would get some orders over the fax later.
That really was hippie. I didn't realize it was that hippie.
Yeah, it was that hippie.
Where was that and what time?
When was that and where?
This is in the 70s and 80s. Well, it was focused more on the Minneapolis area because that particular son was a public school teacher in not Minneapolis, but in Wisconsin and in Milwaukee, and so he had the summers off. He could go around and spread the word there. The dynamics of the brand changed when the fifth generation took over, and there started to be growth. We hired a sales team, and when your brand is small, you have a sales-driven growth strategy, i.e. it's push. At least that was true then. Things are a little different now, but for what was true then, you have a push strategy, and the name of the game is in getting in as many doors as possible. Your salespeople shepherd these relationships with their counterparts in different outlets, and you need to open more doors every single year. After a while, if you're successful, you get in all the doors, and then you focus on market penetration, and you switch from becoming a sales-oriented company to become a marketing-oriented company in order to generate a pull that demands sales and growth, and not just a push so that it's exploratory use and new users all the time.
I'm interested in knowing, because some founders here are probably very new in their brands, and I'm interested in when was kind of the pivot point where you were like, okay, we're finally made it. Maybe you don't feel like you've made it yet. I know brands don't like to say that. Michael Bronner, do you feel like you've made it? You probably don't. No brands like to say it. You've somewhat made it, though. And so, at what point did you kind of say, you know what, all right, we're kind of a big enough brand now where we do need to put some stuff and process in place around how we sell and put a little bit more structure around that?
Oh gosh. That happened we hired a sales manager in 2006. And so that was when things began to formalize. Before then, we worked with brokers. I think Mike ran the sales team, he ran the IT team, he ran everything. It was a very small company then. But around there, in I think November, October 06, somewhere in there, we hired one of our brokers as our first sales manager. Then we started to build on our sales management team. That was essentially part of scaling in general, and it's not any different from other scaling where someone else is making money off of your business need, i.e. you need people to go to the stores, you need people to own relationships, and so there are people, there are brokerage houses who will do this for you, but the first foot in the door is to say, oh, we can hire for ourselves, and we can keep this money that everyone's skimming off of us for doing this service. But you can't do that when you're very small. You have to get to a certain size to warrant a full-time hire with benefits to make it work. At some point, there's the threshold, the financial threshold where it works, and that's not just true of sales. It's true of supply chains, economic order quantities. It's true of infrastructure, things like that. So I don't want to act like this sort of sales and marketing strategy exists in a vacuum. It's part of natural scaling. And scaling is a gerund, it's not something you have done.
So what advice then, right, would you give to some folks who are new brands who maybe have aspirations of being, a 70-year-old brand or 68-year-old brand? What advice would you give them in their early days of thinking about how do you just get started?
First of all, you have to fill a market need. The world is not going to love your product simply because you do. It has to be something that people want. And the first thing that you have to think about is the fact that you have to build margin into your product. You will never get it back if you don't. So the first thing that you sell has to make money on a unit basis. You will never get your margin back because it's a desperate fight for margin the entire time you exist. Now, at the beginning, most of your margin goes to variable cost because you're paying a contract manufacturer, you're just paying a lot of outside people. After a while, your margin goes toward funding CapEx. And so you make that natural shift from variable cost to fewer variable costs, but a lot more overhead to make things work. But you also do that because you can keep a few more pennies on the dollar when you do that. But you have to understand that everything you do, you have to ask the question, if you have 5 products and you think, oh, this is kind of a fun project, what if the one that you put out with the lousy margin is what gets popular and the stuff that actually paid for itself doesn't get popular? Then you're stuck. You always have to have that from the very beginning. You can figure out your finances and such, but if you don't have margin, you don't have anything.
Wow. So I can speak as a founder. Sometimes it's very nerve-wracking to think about, let me go out and actually charge for my first product, right? Who's going to pay for it? But that's sage advice, right? You gotta. Can you talk a little bit, because some of us are not, deep in finance, and so what does it mean to charge at least the margin, right? How are you going to make money? How should we be pricing our stuff to make sure that we make money from the beginning?
Yeah. I'll give a book recommendation, and it'll be much better than anything I can say. There's a book called Islands of Profit in a Sea of Red Ink, and it's basically a primer of cost accounting. And that's not very sexy startup thing to say, but it's a primer in cost accounting, and you have to design the product eyes wide open. You have to know all the components that go into it, tolls, everything, and it's not just the variable cost in it. It's your time. You have to say, what happens if this thing blows up? If I'm selling 1,000 units, what if I can sell 100,000 units? How do I have to think about amortizing all of these fixed costs into this product, and how does it come down? And that's kind of the shape of your business, and it will probably remain the shape of your business for quite a while.
How do you think about product? And I say that because your soaps are so well known, right? And so, like, how do you, like, what? I know you're looking at me like, what the hell?
Yes, yeah, elaborate.
So, is it maybe it's how do you differentiate yourself in the marketplace? Because there's so many competitors that are out there. What keeps you standing out and different from the next competitor that's out there? Because your brand has a very unique place, at least in my mind, in the marketplace. So how do you think about holding on to that advantage? Maybe through the lens of your product, maybe it's something else.
Well, let me give it from two sides as I think about that. The first is that no one else owns us, and so we can get away with a lot of stuff. We can make very long-term decisions, sometimes very short decisions, that are just natural to us. And when you don't have to file quarterly earnings, or you don't have to call the investor hat in hand to say things aren't working out exactly the way you want, it gives you a lot more freedom to act according to how you think the company should run. Our product is a series of promises. And what we promise is that you'll get clean. It's a good soap. We promise that, we promise that it's a good value. If you look at it, what it actually costs to use our product, it's a little more expensive on the shelf, but it's concentrated and it doesn't take very much. And we promise that we've done our best to price in the externalities of doing business in the current milieu. We've priced in the externalities of recycling, we've priced in the externalities of chemicals, the externalities of healthcare. So we're not relying on the tragedy of the commons in order to make a product. Everything is priced in, period. And that includes, that is ecologically, socially, and fiscally. And therefore, that's our brand promise, that everyone along our value chain makes a reasonable and dignified living off of that. And so, like, our brand says that most of our good, 95% of it, I would say, runs through our cost of goods sold statement and through our supply chain. And when you buy the soap, it's not buy a pair of shoes, we'll give one away. It's buy our soap, we've already front-loaded all the good into it. You're just letting us do it again. And we're inviting you to participate in what is essentially an alternative economy. That's the Dr. Bronner's brand promise.
Wow. I'm going to stop buying my oil of Olay and buy your soap now. That's amazing. I'm gonna pause and see if there's any questions based on anything that we've said so far.
I'm in an MBA program, and there's a lot of jokes that are made about like MBA talk when it comes to like like more standardized management strategies. And so I guess my question for you is, do you employ any effective management strategies that may not be considered like, standard MBA, part of like a standard MBA curriculum, something unique that you find that's effective?
Can I translate?
Yes, of course.
Beyond the MBA BS, what other kind of management
Correct,
strategies?
yeah.
Well, okay, first of all, I'm an MBA, and I'm getting a DBA, okay?
I believe in it, that's why I'm in it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm not only an MBA, but I'm going back for like for a Doctorate of Business Administration. So is there value in business education and not simply on-the-job training? Absolutely. I hire MBAs, I believe in it, and MBAs don't come knowing anything about your business or the job day one, but what they have is a more solid rubric in there. As far as management strategies and processes, people would do well to differentiate the idea of like the sort of BS corporate that everyone hates, the Dilbert type stuff and even worse, from the corporate that's good. There's a lot of corporate structures that work because when you're 10 people, you can map on all those relationships. When you're 1,000 people, the combinatorials get out of control and you have to have structure. I actually shared a slide. I don't have it here, but when I was talking with Maisha before this, and there's a turning point, okay? The smallest insect is a fairy fly, okay? And you almost can't see it. It's like, I'm not going to go into the sizes, but the largest one is essentially a giant weeda, okay? And insects can only get so big because they'll essentially collapse it on themselves if they get too large. Open circulatory systems, exoskeletons, things like that. But the smallest mammal is a number of times smaller than the largest insect, okay? But what can mammalian DNA do? It can scale as large as a blue whale, okay? 40 meters long, 100 tons. The MBA and the things that you learn allow you to go. When you're small, everybody wears a bunch of hats. It's what you have to do to survive. But at some point, you have to doff that DNA, that insect-like DNA, survival stuff, and adapt the more mammalian DNA with structure, and that getting it done right is as important as getting it done because you're going to have to do it 1,000 more times, and so you better get it done efficiently. You have to doff your insect DNA and pick up your mammalian DNA in order to scale. And business education is kind of a shortcut to that. You can figure it out. And most importantly, no matter what you do, you have to learn double entry accounting. Period. Okay? There's a lot of salespeople that don't know accounting. There's marketing people that don't know accounting. There's ops people that don't know accounting. But as you go up, the people who actually run the business and understand it are people who can take everything and put it in accounting terms. And the accounting terms, let's just go through it from a very basic way. You open a lemonade stand and you have assets, and you either have to borrow money or you pony up your own. Everything you ever do forever in double entry accounting says it's either borrowed money or your own money to pay for stuff. And when you keep sort of the ontologically pure connection from however complex you are back to it's either my money or someone else's, how do we pay for this, in every single transaction forever, that allows you to construct and build a good business in there. You have to have a GL structure that can handle it, so open it up. And put more, and as you're growing, you need to put more detail into it than you think you need, because you will praise your former self for having put that detail in, because it's so expensive to try to open up the black box and read comments and things. Like, that's why so much of the AI people try to sell me is trying to unscramble stuff that people have bodged with not understanding good key structures and data and things like that.
So MBA good, I have one too.
Yeah.
But I think the bigger lesson here is where you start your business is not where you're gonna have to end. Corporate is not a bad word, right? Structure is not a bad word. At some point, when you grow up, your business has to adopt these things or you won't grow. Whatever that first insect was to the blue one. You won't be able to get there. And I think that's the part. There was another question. Yeah, Kathy.
It always makes me smile to see your product at Costco, and I was wondering how that came to be. Two-part question. And the second is, how does the ethos of Dr. Bronner's get translated to the Costco customer?
That's a hard question.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I think you an easy one and then.
Well, Costco comes from having a sales staff and beating on doors. Sometimes people come and find you. Sometimes you go and find them. Like, we said no to Walmart for a long time, and our CEO wrote them a letter that said why we wouldn't sell to them, and you have to fix these things about your business before we'll sell to you. We didn't have that kind of thing with Costco because Costco treats its people well. A lot of solar, just good benefits and such. It was very transactional, very quotidian, the way it happened. We got into sundries, which is a strange place for a soap to be, but we got into the sundries department, and the biggest thing about Costco is that we decided to sell a different size, probably for the same reason why everyone else sells a different size to Costco. I'll just leave it at that. But Costco is a good company. It's very easy to sell to Costco nowadays. It's a good value, and because the same soap that goes into Costco will go into Whole Foods or go anywhere else, it comes out of the same production equipment. The same value proposition is there. The same brand proposition is there. How do you sell it for less? It's because we don't have to disintermediate. We don't have to take a bunch of different SKUs and put them on a pallet and put labels on the pallet in order to fit someone's automated receiving technology. That's very expensive. With Costco, you can just run it and you make a pallet and you put a label on it and you send it. It really cuts out a lot of fulfillment labor, and so much of a price nowadays is actually the fulfillment labor, the getting to the door. And so I think it's a good value on both sides, and I think that it suits the Dr. Bronner's ethos pretty well. I miss being able to ship lots of pallets to people. Our golden age was around 2017 when our labor dollar for fulfillment was the cheapest, and it's just gotten worse ever since with more direct retailers and with more e-com since then.
I've never heard golden age being associated with pallet fulfillment. Yes.
Bronner's has been successful for many years. What's next?
Oh.
What's next? Well, okay. Dr. Bronner's, without giving any product plans, Dr. Bronner's is a little bit of a victim of its own success. For a long time, we sold to the true believers, and they understood the value proposition. After a while, you run out of true believers because they already buy the soap, and so you have Joe Walmart and Jane Target, and you think, what's their value proposition? And a lot of their value proposition is price per ounce. And so we are working to crack the price per ounce problem, but without a diminishing of quality, without a diminishing of all of everything that makes our brand what it is. That's as much as I can say.
Thank you.
You have a question?
I was just going to say, with Dr. Bronner, it seems like it's a very consistent product, like something I've recognized from 20 years ago. It's the same thing I see today. Did you ever, in many other markets, they change that direction, kind of play and see what might work? It seems like Dr. Bronner has been very consistent and hasn't moved the needle. Did you ever consider changing it? I love it, but did you ever consider changing it? And what was your decision to stay consistent?
Well, no, because the value proposition is primarily in the quality of the soap, and so it's not watered down. It's not exactly the same soap that Dr. Bronner made. It's better. Okay, it's better because we have, instead of rosemary, we have better preservative tocopherols. It's much more consistent. It's actually, from an industrial process, it's a much more consistent and it's a much better product than it was when Dr. Bronner was making it. He did absolutely the best he could, but we're larger, we have a quality control team, and we watch this stuff like a hawk. We watch all the data points to ensure consistency. And the only difference regionally would be some fragrances that aren't available in the States, and in some places hemp is illegal. Well, a lot of places hemp is illegal, and so we make a special base that doesn't have hemp in it, but it's exactly the same other than that. And those have an NHP, a no hemp designation, and we're careful to keep those separated and to stay legal in that way.
Let me say one thing, Crowley, and then I'm going to come to you. There's some really interesting gold nuggets that are in everything that Michael has been saying. The first thing is this idea that your brand is your promise. And if you hear about how they're making choices about what stores they do business with and how they do business and how they are creating their product, that is equally as important for your business as anything that you put on a shelf. The other part that I think was golden, I love the MBA question, is what got you to start won't get you to the finish line. And so you always have to be a business that is in transition and looking toward growth, which means you may have to adopt some different processes in a certain path, and it's not a bad thing. Curly.
Oh, you did a great job, Mike.
Thank you.
Michael always talks about like someone's story, someone's roadmap, right? And Michael, you explained about just fragrance, like remember about the cherry and the almond and how that makes it familiar. Can you just tell that story a little bit about?
Oh, okay.
All right. Detail of what that is. That's all.
Well, let me go a little bit further and say that the reason why we have so many fragrances is because Dr. Bronner never ran out of things to say, and they wouldn't fit on the peppermint, and so it had to spill over. Okay. What I commented earlier, he had never seen the almond before, and so he smelled it. I said, "Does it smell familiar?" And I said, "Think of a banana split," because the almond fragrance is natural benzaldehyde, which is the same thing that you put in a maraschino cherry, and so that's a warm smell that you get out of it.
I'm so fascinated. You have a new brand loyalist. There's so much about your brand that is so much deeper than meets the eye. I'm all in. Can you talk a little bit, and then I'm gonna wrap up in about five or so minutes. But we talked a little bit in the green room about strategy versus tactics, and how in the early days of startups, especially for early founders, there is this tendency to believe that you got to be really busy and go do a whole bunch of stuff, tactical stuff, versus really focusing on the strategy. And so I wonder if you could just give us some perspective on strategy versus tactics.
Okay. Some of that comes down to sort of the fundamental question, and as founders, you are both. You are both leaders and management. Okay, and so you have to deal with complexity as leadership, which is sort of emerging, sort of the front of the train, the emergence from the future into the now, and eyes forward on that. And that's your strategic vision, where you're going, things like that. Your tactical vision is more your management. And again, that's one of those things when you start to say, oh, we need T's on the DNA here, is when you start to separate leadership from management. But management is very tactical, and it's how you get your strategy done. And you had picked up and said that will change over time. So your strategy is almost generational for what you want to do. Your tactics will there's a shelf life on your tactics, and it's appropriate. And it's not a failure that what worked 10 years ago doesn't work now, because the world changes, supply chains change, things like that. Everything changes over time. And as you grow, your tactics change as well. You get a lot more people who are a lot more specialized, and maybe you long for the good old days where everyone knew everything, but there's also advantages toward having specialists too, is what I would say. As you grow, you will never be less complex. No, you will never be any less complex than you are right now. And you will be fundamentally more complex with every echelon you hit. And you have to embrace the fact that that's true and look for it. Now, at the beginning, these changes, they kind of trip you up. Like, we used to contract manufacture our soap. We used to have it contract manufactured in LA. And one of the things I did when I came aboard 20 years ago was help bring production in-house. And so we did that. And we thought, finally, this long project is done. Our life is fixed forever. And then in COVID, we came to within 14% of absolute capacity. And we thought, oh gosh, we're going to run out of soap sometime. And the lesson was, you don't buy forever solutions. You buy solutions that have a shelf life. And when you're getting to about 80% of that shelf life, you need to figure out the next thing. So you need to know your math really well too, and not just that, but you need to know, like, statistically, if I grow 22%, what are my chances? And that's your stats with standard deviations. Like, how much risk do I want to annul through paying money for this stuff early, like that kind of thing.
How do you know what to say no to? Because it's always a balance, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's something that they don't teach you in upper management school, if there's such a thing. They don't say that after a while. I spend a lot of my days, not a lot of my days, but I have a lot of reports, and my reports are mainly upper management. And so I don't have to say that's a numbskull idea, because none of them are. They're all good ideas. I have to figure out how to say yes to the best idea out of a bunch of excellent ideas. And a lot of it is what I was talking about, knowing the numbers, knowing how everything relates to the financials, and not just now, but say we adopt this, how is it going to project into the future, and what shape is the company going to be? But then it all comes down to the basic math. Does it affirm our strategy? And tactically, what is the net present value of this dollar? Because it's always about the use of limited resources. And you only get so many checks to write. Which are the best checks to write? And you do that by knowing your business. You never get above the financials. You always have to know it. And you decide according to what will propel you to the best financial state. And what does that mean? For us, as a going concern with no desire to sell, that means that over time, we need in our balance sheet, margins are just a way of building a healthy balance sheet. We're balance sheet oriented, and that you want your owner's equity to be a certain portion of your assets, and you could use debt. You don't want to use too much, But you want to program all that so that you can be a profitable going concern without too much going into debt service, without losing margin things, that sort of thing. I start to repeat myself, but that's all those questions go back to the numbers. Very few are existential or ontological questions, really.
Numbers don't lie.
Right.
We have some very chatty audience members.
I appreciate the help.
All right, I have a couple of rapid fire questions. I will take one last question, or one or two last questions, and then ask rapid fire.
To just publicly thank Dr. Bronner for having such an inspiring mission. And
So just so everyone knows, she's the executive director of Startup
That's
San
Lisa
Diego.
Barnett.
And she's saying exactly how she rehearsed it.
this is, no, I
Kidding.
live for missions, mission driven, that's my middle two names. And so
She's an MD.
it is so inspiring. And to the quick nod to the MBA question, when we do our co-founder matching or C-suite team or just team building matching, it's the CTOs are looking for the CEOs and they're looking for the COOs, and everyone's got their role. And so there's the person that shows up with they're inspired, they have the idea, like Dr. Bronner's. And then you have these wonderful MBAs, like it takes right everyone. And and so the idea that you guys are sticking to the mission, and it takes everyone that will help you get profitable, do all the things you want to do, and then when you don't, the fact you've been able to not have to answer to outside influence that is really inspiring, I think, for all founders, because when you're a founder and it's your baby, you really don't want to leave it with the babysitter, you know? So anyway, just wanted to say thank you.
Actually, I have a quick comment about that. One thing though is that we don't entertain equity financing. We don't bring partners in, but we do have some debt financing because CapEx is pretty expensive to fund the next machine. Okay, and but we think we can make more money off of that than the debt service takes, and so it's positive. But one great thing is that your bankers are kind of your thought partners, because they're not going to let you get away with anything. And when you're in a company, there's a lot of confirmation bias. You can talk yourself into anything, but those banking ratios, you think, if we do this, we'll be out of compliance. That's a really good reality check. And it can keep you on the straight and narrow there.
David Losecki, are you here? I thought no David here. No bankers in the house. All right.
Here in spirit.
All right, a couple rapid fire questions for you. All right, one. What's one mistake early founders make when trying to grow that you want them to think about?
I would say that if you believe in your brand, don't join the race to the bottom. Don't go for the EDLP, okay, the everyday low price. I would say it's better to maintain control and to grow slowly. That's a lifestyle thing. Can you do that? I mean, there's a lot that I'm saying from a very comfortable position, and I realize that. But don't follow the EDLP. Push back on long terms. Push back on unfavorable terms. What you have now that we did not have is this massively parallel marketplace, so that you can have a presence. When we were growing into our current size, it was functionally pre-ecom, and you had brick and mortar gatekeepers. That's kind of, brick and mortar is kind of a zero-sum game. If you get shelf space, someone pushes you out, and vice versa. Ecom is a race for eyeballs, and that can be expensive. But you have a really great opportunity to build your brand in the online space, which will then get you the attention of the brick and mortar retailers. And I would say it depends. Okay. My assumption in all of this is that there's not an exit strategy. If you are building a brand in order to sell it, then that's a completely different book, and you have your round A, your round B, and you basically reverse engineer your business from the selling point to what you want to do. You can do that, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about slow growth where you're building something that people want long term. Learn how to say no to the gimmies, because that will steal your margin and you'll never get your margin back.
That's a gimme.
Well, like I'll buy all this. I will buy tenfold if you'll lower your price to something that I like, that they like, but is unsustainable. I will do this, but I'm going to stretch my payment terms to 75 days. It's going to kill your cash cycle. It's going to kill your free cash flow and your ability to plunge that back into inventory or back into operations.
One decision you're glad you made for the long term.
I'm going to nerd out. We about 12 years, like I haven't been doing that the whole time. About 12 years ago, my thought partner and I, our VP of Finance, we sat down and we thought, what is the business going to look like? And we designed a 19-digit 6-segment GL. And it holds both all the gap stuff, but it holds all these different segments that you can treat as you want. And we're able to, it has been fantastic for us for cost accounting over the years. That black box that's saying don't build, that has been absolutely vital in the success of the company, because we know at the most minuscule level how much margin we make in every combinatorial you can imagine. We know exactly how much margin, and it all comes down to that. And so building the complexity into your systems before you think you need them, you will never regret that. And it doesn't cost anything to do that, because if you have 18 digits and you have a 5-digit main, you just leave everything else zeros until you need it. But when you need it, and then you start to fill it up over time. You grow into it.
I want to have the rest of the Dr. Bronner's team stand and let us recognize you as well, please. Thank you.
Stand up, Garrison.
Awesome. So thank you so much for, thank you for the samples that you gave us today. Thank you for being here all day. Thank you so much, Michael, for the wisdom that you have shared with us. Thank you all for your brand. It's an amazing brand. I am inspired. I share Lisa's view that it's not often you see brands that live what they say, and it's very clear that you do that. So thank you so much for your time and sharing all your nuggets of wisdom with us. Let's give them a round of applause.